Okay, well, welcome. I just need to let you know this is being recorded and we cannot shut the recording off for any reason. So, well, yeah, those things.
Yeah.
We had an issue with our joint commission meeting where, you know, I mean, people talk and that kind of thing. And there was some things said that was, I don't know, maybe not, should have been said. But yeah, and
information.
and one of the members, not on our group, but one of the members from another entitlement, she was all sorts of frustrated with me, and I'm like, told you it was being recorded, you know.
Yeah.
We actually don't even turn it off. Like if we were to take a break for lunch or dinner or something like that, you still don't turn it off. Is what my recorder told me the other day. So that's the way it is.
So have dinner first.
Yeah, dinner first. Well, welcome, thank you. I know this is a kind of an odd time, and I'm glad that you were able to join us. We got special permission to have this meeting because of the different deadlines that we have to make. So, but I do appreciate you being here, and we'll try to make it as quick as we can. Because of this, our lovely COVID-19, you will have to listen to me all night. I apologize. So I might let Stephen talk, but you know, so no one's coming in to present. I will be making all the presentations. All but really one is a city presentation anyway, but I was gonna have some people come in and talk to you, so you didn't have to listen to me all night. But because of that, the recorder actually asked me not to have people come in, and I told her I would just go ahead. So I hope that's okay with everyone.
We're okay with that.
And I don't know, I text her again, so I
No,
don't
you're
know
fine.
what's gone.
You're good.
Okay, so, are you still there, Mattathias?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, all right, so just for the recording, let's just introduce ourselves. I'm Kena Mathews from the city of Orem.
Nate Evans.
Ken Ransom.
Joey Alisa. Tanya Harmon.
Stephen Downs.
Mattathias,
Mattathias Westwood.
thank you. All right, so we did approve the January 16 minutes over email. We just have to make a motion to put them into the meeting. So if I could get a motion to put.
Motion.
Excuse me?
Motion.
Oh, motion? Okay.
I motion to
Thanks.
approve.
He's helping us speed this meeting up.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to remember you're here. From above. Okay, well, I just wanted to go over the process just a little, quickly, kind of let you know what we've done to date. And we can ask Joey or Ken they want to say anything about the process to date as well. But we did meet twice. The Joint Commission met twice in March, actually back to back almost. We heard several presentations, and we'll go over those in just a little bit. And I thought it went pretty well. I felt like our commission members had a little more background and experience than some of the other ones. We played a lot of catch up here and there, but all in all, I thought that it went really well, and everyone was really positive and that kind of thing. So basically what we did is we had all of any public service entity that was serving more than one entitlement made a presentation to the Joint Commission. So we ended up only having one public service Orem only project. It's actually from Orem City, so it's a little different. Usually we'll have maybe Kids on the Move or someone like that, but they decided to go for other areas as well. So we had several presentations over the 2 days, and we also had our capital projects. So as you know, last year we decided to jointly fund 2 capital projects. 2 or 3 capital, we decided on 2 last year, and we do a percentage of the capital funds based on who they're serving. So so this year one of the applicants was United Way, and they serve maybe 30% of their clients in Orem. So we would put 30% of our non-social service funding into that pot. And so we actually selected those 2 projects as well. And then what we did is from those joint presentations on the public service side of things, we met as entitlement staff and we assigned the best we could. We lucked out. Provo and Utah County did not luck out, but we were able to end up with only 3 public service entities this year. So we really lucked out based on the amount of money. Some of them were split between, and we'll go over that in just a minute. Some of them were split between Utah County and Provo. Some of them were Utah County only, some were, so you can kind of see that on this paper. So, do you guys want to make any comments about the process? Any of you 3 that were there?
It was an interesting process, having a group of people you didn't really know together like that.
That was interesting. And it was nice seeing the breakdown of like the priorities of funding. That was
So.
nice too.
And it wasn't any easier having a bigger pot of money to figure out how to
Nope.
divvy it up. So.
I
Yeah.
was gonna ask, what's the difference year over year in this year's cash?
We actually, we are getting about 20,000 more than we did last year. I don't know what the other entitlements got, a little more as well. And we'll talk about at the end about, we just found out today that we will probably be getting more money because of COVID-19. And we don't know what that's gonna look like, but we just got informed of that today. Not officially from HUD, but from this group that we belong to, the NCDA, had asked, and they're infusing $2 billion, right? I think
That
that's
was-
what it was,
okay.
$2 billion in
So
CDBG funds.
No,
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
This will be easy.
We'll go build our new city center in an elevated area, you
Yeah.
know. So they're
It's
gonna
part of the
do-
stimulus package.
Right, so they're gonna do a couple of different things. There'll be money given directly through the formula that we already follow to us, to the entitlements. There'll be money given to the state, and then additionally, there might be some COVID-19 money based on the amount of cases we have in our community. So we're pretty low, so I don't expect to get any of that money, but I would assume New York, California. Right, yeah, but you know.
Yeah, we hope to never see that
New
money.
York, California, that kind of thing, we'll probably get some of that money as well.
Yeah.
So we don't know what that's gonna look like, and when that comes in, we'll bring you back together and figure that out or something, so.
Oh, reallocating.
For that new money too, they we're limited in 15% of the money going to public services like food bank and all that. They're lifting that limit, so that money could potentially go directly to healthcare services and things like that.
Economic development, that kind of thing. So we're excited to see that, we're excited to see what that's gonna look like, but, well, let's get on with the presentation.
I have a question,
Uh-huh.
so when would those monies come in and when would you have to allocate them and you don't know?
We don't know those details yet, but I think the money comes in pretty quick. They're using the same formula to try to get, so that they already know how the money will get pushed out, and they don't have to decide how to divvy up at least that portion of it that would come to us. So I anticipate it all happening pretty fast. And then we'll have to find out what the process then looks like of allocating it. If there's additional public hearings and all that, I don't know yet.
So, any other questions? Okay, so this will be our allocation for this year. The allocation from HUD is $700,333. This is actually a known number. Oftentimes it's an unknown number, but for some reason we got it early this year. So that is a known number. We also have some rollover CDBG funding throughout the years that either haven't been used on projects or public services haven't used other money or that kind of thing. And so we have about 114,000 additional funds. We allocated 10% of our public service funding or 10% of our allocation to the Joint Commission for Public Services, so that was $70,000. And then we allocated a little over $95,000 for the joint capital projects. So that leaves us with $648,838 to actually divvy up today. It goes away really fast.
Our total asks, like 534.
Well, you'll see that we'll go through that,
Okay.
so that's kind of what we're looking at right now. Any questions on that?
So where's the money we're kicking into the joint stuff? Where is that separate or is that?
That's the 70,000 that we,
Okay.
so we all agreed, all the entitlements agreed to take 10% of our 15% of public services and put that towards the joint projects. And then the other 5% can go to Orem only public service projects, however, we only have one. So we can use that funding for non-public services as well. We just can't use more than the 15% for not, if that makes sense, so. We are in the process of doing our consolidated plan. This is the plan that we have to do for every 5 years, to look at priorities in our community, and see where we want federal funding to go. And so we have been working with the other entitlements. We did done a couple of different things. First of all, we hired a consultant. He did 3 reports more in regards to housing and the impediments to fair housing. He did 3 reports for us. I think we talked about those in our last meeting. And then we did some surveying. So we did, we had over 300 surveys returned, which was really good. So we did some surveying with local nonprofits throughout the other entitlements, and so we were able to get those plan priorities. And then we actually did activities with each of our councils and to see what their priorities were as well. So these are the priorities. So Provo's priorities were homeowner rehabilitation, services for special needs populations, and commercial rehabilitation. So that was the Provo City Council's goals. Orem City was homeowner assistance, public housing improvements, and economic development, infrastructure development. Utah County was public facilities, water and sewer, and public safety. So you've got to know that Utah County serves a lot of cities, and you can see that definitely that's where that direction was going. A lot of mayors sit on their commission, and you can kind of see. We had 2 mayors sit on our joint commission from Genola and American Fork. Yeah.
Yes.
And then service agencies, the other thing that we did is we had a facilitated discussion with Mary Delmar Schaefer from UTA. She's a really good facilitator. We brought in a bunch of public service entities, and we went through a process with her to determine what we felt like the public service entities' priorities were. And it came out as housing, affordability, mental health, and education. And then through our citizens response, we almost had 600 responses through our citizen survey. Housing services, mental health services, services for neglected, abused and neglected children, fire stations and equipment, and street improvements. So those were the things that came out of there. So if you take all of those, the overall priorities is housing, as most of us that work in this world know that. Affordability, accessibility, assistance, improvements. So that was the main. Second would be services to special needs populations, mental health, survivors of abuse, and public infrastructure would be the third. So streets, water, sewer facilities, and improvements. So as a commission, we're supposed to take these priorities into account as we are looking to allocate funds. We know that's not always easy because we don't have a lot of housing agencies coming to us to apply. We only had 2, because one was for drug abuse. And we only had 2 actually apply through the Joint Commission for housing, out of all those others that we had apply. So, but housing is quite the priority. It is the priority for HUD as well. So just to keep that in mind. Any questions on those priorities? Any questions, Mattathias?
We'll know when he leaves though.
Okay. Okay. So joint.
That makes sense, sorry, I had muted myself.
Okay.
You're good.
I was watching an economic development conference call yesterday, and Mitt Romney was talking, and they went to ask him a question, and he's just talking, and no one can hear him, and he was muted for a minute, so we all do it. So these were the joint projects that we were actually assigned. So Kids on the Move, that's for their early Head Start program, that's what we funded them at as of last year as well, so we did early Head Start. Rocky Mountain University Foundation for $20,000, this is for their community rehabilitation clinic. We have funded them in the past, they were not funded through us last year, but they're a physical therapy clinic, so they do no-cost physical therapy for people in need in our community. And then RAW, Recreation and Rehabilitation. This is a program for adults with disabilities down in Provo. A great program. They do a lot of good. They do day trips, day activities of people, adults with disabilities. And we funded them in the past 2 years ago, but we're funding them at $45,000. They call it a raw able project. So our total was $70,000. But if you want to pick out this sheet, I don't want to. So this was all of our requests, and you can see that, you know, most of the people that we have funded in the past got funded on some level. So Kids on the Move, we have them. The physical therapy and RAW, we talked about. Community action services, housing services, we haven't funded on that before, but they're getting funded. Their Circles program is getting funded. Just as a caveat, their food bank, we decided not to fund them this year for their food bank. And the reason for that is they were for the LDS Church, they were one of the Giving Machine entities, and they got over $225,000.
Yeah.
And so she actually was pretty good about telling us that and wanted us to know that. So we felt at that point that there was other people that maybe needed the funding more.
And she essentially asked to withdraw.
Well, yes and no.
Yeah, assuming they can use the money for something, but yeah, it was clearly a team player type move.
Right, very much
Yeah.
so. Just so that you know that's why, because, you know, we funded them for many years. Community Health Connect, which was one that we funded last year, they got funded. They're a organization that provides specialty care and dental care for people in need. Project Read, we funded them a couple of years ago. They're an adult literacy program. Food and Care were ones that we funded last year. This is for their meal program, and you can see that they've been funded. Boys and Girls Club, we actually did not fund them last year. They made application and we did not fund them. We didn't feel like their program was in a good place at the time, but they have made some adjustments and things, and some of the other entitlements had funded them. Share a Smile Foundation is a dental foundation to provide dental care for people in need, and this is the first year they've ever applied. And so it's a really good program. It was started by a doctor that Dennis has passed away, and they have a clinic at the Henry Shrine building up in American Fork. They used to have one of the Food and Care Coalition. They do not anymore. The Children's Justice Center, is that what that one is? Yeah.
County Children's Justice Center.
They were funded. They're one that we've always funded in the past, just let you know that they were funded at a good amount of money. Mountainlands Community Health Center is another one that we have funded in the past. Big Brothers Big Sisters, I think we've funded them in the past, have we? Mm-hmm. It's been a while ago, but they provide mentoring for kids, or big brother, big sister kind of mentoring to kids in need. Family Support and Treatment Center, this is one that we've always funded for their counseling program, and they were funded. Neighborhood Housing Services, they actually, they have a capital request for us, or non-public service request that I'll go over with you tonight. But they are funded for their financial literacy, homebuyer education programs. Center for Women and Children in Crisis, so we didn't get them. Darn. But yeah, they were funded at their full request. So you can see that most everyone that we've ever had come to us or we've funded were funded. So do you have any questions?
And I know we've talked about this before, but how it used to be was Utah County, Provo, and Orem would all three fund every organization a little bit. And then they would apply to all three, report to all three, be monitored by all three. And when Kena and Utah County and Provo started doing this, jointly, we found that we can fund everybody essentially to the same amounts, but they only have to report to one agency. And so now we went down from 15, I think at one point, down to 3 organizations, but everybody still gets the same money. It's been really, really nice.
And you can see some have to report to Provo and Utah County, but it's only a handful. Most of them are reporting to one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a question, Nate?
No, it's the freshman.
Okay.
I think there's about 5 that are reporting to Orem and the county. Or no, 2, just 2.
Yeah, so it wasn't too many that had to go to both. Mattathias, if you have any questions, just say you do.
Boom down on us.
Yeah. Okay, and then
All right.
okay. And then the joint projects, was United Way of Utah County. Their request was $207,000. They actually own the building that Community Action is in. And so this was for roof repair and some other repair at that building. They also, Central Hispanic used to be there. I'm not sure who's gonna move into those offices. Central Hispanic moved to a different location. And then Paratransit is also there. So this is to make, repairs to that, much needed repairs to that building. If you've ever been there, that's a pretty old building. And then Wasatch Mental Health, came to us, for, $250,000 for what they call a receiving center. So this would be someone that's in crisis, where they could come and they could stay for not several days, what was it like?
23 hours.
23 hours, that's right. Where they could, help them get the things that they need when they're in a mental health crisis. So they're not gonna have beds there, and they're not gonna have anything like that. They'll have couches and TVs and things where people can relax and then get some of the help they need or transition to where they need to be. So it's just kind of something that's greatly needed in this community.
Yeah. It'll pull the pressure off of emergency rooms, so people will be routed there.
That's
Get there.
They were hoping to get money from the legislature, did they?
I think they did. I haven't heard otherwise. Yeah, they were in the governor's budget, which they were really grateful for to help with this project. So it will be down on their campus. Their campus is kind of near, it's not called Seven Peaks anymore, but near Seven Peaks, whatever it's called down there. And they have a large campus of different programs. So like Vantage Point, their homeless youth shelters there, some other of their programs are there as well. So that's kind of just what the Joint Commission, so we thank Ken and Joey for all their hard work. It saved you guys a few nights of listening, so. Any questions on that?
I just have a general question, Brent. So why does Provo basically have twice the funding we're doing? It's not that much bigger than here.
Their income levels are a lot lower, so they just have generally more low income. So they do it based on population and on income levels in those communities.
So it's not just population.
Yeah, and Provo is driven really heavy because of the amount of married BYU students that are essentially have very little income but are a family, so it generates more money.
And they're also the county seat.
In the county seat, and they have a lot of the resources in their community too. So, a few different factors, population being one of them, and they are I think they are still about 15, 20, almost 20,000 more people than us. So a little bit of that, but mostly the income levels.
I didn't realize it was such a disparity until I saw this. I was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah, Lehigh only gets like 250, so we feel blessed that, we're getting that amount of money. And it really is dependent on how many people are coming in and out and up and down, and it's just a formula we probably couldn't even tell you how they do it. It's convoluted and that kind of thing. So,
Nice government formulas.
yeah. So any questions on that? Okay, you get to hear me go on these presentations. So we'll start with Neighborhood Housing Services of Provo. Or they have various different names, but Neighborhood Housing of Provo is asking for $100,000 for a 4-plex senior housing project in Orem's affordable senior housing overlay zone. The overlay zone was created to allow for senior housing in different zones in Orem, and it has to be rent controlled. So it has to meet, there's a rent control through the housing authorities and it has to meet those guidelines. So if you're developing that, and NHS Pro will also be receiving home funds. Those are funds through the consortium that we sit on, which we're part of, which is also for housing. But they actually have a presentation, so we'll do the presentation if I can. Yeah, I told him I would try to do a really good job for him, so we'll see if I can. So NeighborWorks was known for many years as neighborhood housing. Is
It's
it?
just not up there.
Oh,
Do you need help?
yeah. You know me.
No.
Oh. Okay, thanks. So Neighborhood Housing Services was founded several years ago by a group of women who wanted a crosswalk across 500 West in Provo, over there by Pioneer Park. And then they went kind of looking for an organization to help them because they felt empowered because they got the crosswalk. So that's down in the older neighborhoods of Provo. So they were concerned about the older neighborhoods, wanted to improve them. So they went looking for an organization that could do that. And there's this quasi-government organization called NeighborWorks America. And so they were able to start Neighborhood Housing Services of Provo. Things have evolved and changed and that kind of thing. So they are now known. They used to only be in downtown Provo, but they're now, that was not what I wanted to do. Let me try this again. Sorry, it went to the end of the. I know a lot about them because I used to work for them, so that's the, but it's been a long time ago. So now they're known as NeighborWorks Mountain Country Home Solutions, because I always tease him about they picked the longest name they could possibly pick, but they actually just don't serve, they serve all of Utah County. They're working in St. George in that area, and now they're working actually in the Garfield County area. They do rentals, they do home ownership, they also do financial counseling and things like that. So they've come a long way since that time frame.
You're good.
Okay. So they're a charter member of NeighborWorks America, the Network of Excellence. They're part of a network of 230 NeighborWorks organizations in the nation. And there's only 2 in the state of Utah. So there's them, and then there's NHS of Salt Lake as well. They've spent 25 years providing affordable quality rental and homeownership opportunities. They built or rehabbed over 150 homes in our community. They've invested over $30 million in physical housing stock. They've counseled over 7,000 families, and they've housed 250 individuals in 81 rentals in that time frame. This is some of their senior family construction experience, or their single family construction experience. This is called Franklin Commons. It's down on 5th West, about 5th South, I think. They took a whole corner and created this, what they call Franklin Commons. This is what it looks like 13 years later. So it's still very nice, very well done. There's Habitat built houses right across the kitty corner from it. And so it is a really nice area to be in. They've also they've done some single family homes. One of the things that they have done, I believe this house, if I remember right, this house actually burned down. A house on this property had burned down. They bought it and took it out and rebuilt this home. This is in the Mazer neighborhood, Mazer Franklin. They've done some projects. I think this is down in the Dixon neighborhood. So you can kind of see how they've renovated some of those projects as well. So this is they also do rental housing. So this is their current rental portfolio. This is weird to me, okay.
Yeah.
So this is, this, I believe, from what he told us in the home presentation, this is actually a fourplex. This, even though it looks like a house, looks like a large home. And this is kind of their biggest development today. This is Central Park Station. This is a couple blocks from Community Action right off Freedom Boulevard. And it's become a really nice place to be. That's kind of multi-income. So most of it is low income, but they do have some normal income units as well. And they have, I think they have 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units there. So you can kind of see that. So what they're proposing is a senior housing project. It's down, I believe, near the Cherry Hill School, is what we're looking at. It would be a fourplex, and it would be for low-income seniors or senior couples. And they would rent it and manage it out. And so this is kind of the proposed layout, as you can kind of see. I believe, I don't know if you guys are familiar with on the houses next to Carillon Square. They're on 1200 South. There's some like apartment units that look like they're very flat to the ground. Have you seen those? You know what I'm
12th
talking
West
about?
and Main Street, just
Yeah.
east of Main.
So the Housing Authority of Utah County built those senior projects, and I believe these are gonna be similar looking. So that's kind of the project, and we're excited. Our development services, our planning department's excited about this project. This is a good location for this, and it's already been approved and ready to go, so. But you can see there's a huge need for senior housing in our community. Right now, on the waiting list for the Housing Authority, there's 613 seniors on the waiting list. For Provo Housing Authority, there's 254 seniors. Just on Central Park Station, there are apartment units, there's 13 on the waiting list. So just from those 3 sources, 880 seniors are looking for affordable housing in our community. So it kind of ends with this cute little couple. The quality of our expectations determines the quality of our actions. So that's what they are asking for. So that'd be non-social service funding. It fits the housing priority criteria and a great need in our community. We don't have a lot of senior housing in Orem either. So it would be a really nice project, I think. So any questions that I can answer? Okay, come get lined up back up. Sorry.
No, you're good.
So it's 4 units,
Uh-huh.
and do they have like a cap on how many people can live in each of the units?
Yeah, it's couples only.
Couples?
Up to, yeah.
A single.
So
Single, a
4
single-
people, a maximum of 8.
Yes. So it could be a single person or a senior couple.
Given the need though, maybe we do it student housing style.
Right.
It's 6 students.
6 units. 6. I mean, it's a small, it's something that we haven't done a lot of housing with CDBG. We've done some with Habitat, but this would be a fun project to do, especially we've never done it. I don't think we've ever done a senior project, have we?
Especially since it's based on the mandates that we were
Uh-huh.
trying
Yeah.
to fill.
Yeah.
And we like that it's in the overlay, the senior overlay zone because, the rents have to be capped, even though NHS would cap them anyway, but, it keeps that, it maintains that, so. Okay. So we'll go through the rest pretty fast because you're pretty familiar with these. So we're asking for $100,000 for our critical home repair and home rehabilitation program. This is the program that we talked about several months ago where we asked you to allocate more of our leftover funding towards. We've had quite a bit of success. Luckily, the applications have stopped a little bit because we had a lot of applications in a short period of time. But we have finished now, I believe, 8 projects-ish. We had quite a few invoices this week, so, and pretty critical projects, mostly roofing projects, leaking roofs. We've been, even in the last couple of weeks, we've repaired 2 roofs that I'm familiar with.
And we've been, they get scrutinized pretty heavy. We've told some people no. We've done just partials on a lot of projects. So we're really trying to make sure we can make this money last as long as it can. But you get things like, for example, we don't know if there potentially is even minimal earthquake damage to somebody's home that they haven't found yet that they'll find. We just feel like there's gonna be continued need in repairing housing around here.
I noticed I think it was in this one, that you give the recipients a sign that they can display. Is this the one?
While it's being constructed,
While
yeah.
it's being
While it's
constructed.
being constructed. Do they usually display them? Is it usually?
Well, we are consultant, we tell him to display them, so
Oh,
yeah.
okay, got it,
Yeah.
okay.
So we do have a consultant that for every project, he goes out and gets bids, make sure all the lead-based paint type testing's done, and then, yeah, he just will display that while the construction project goes on.
Okay, any questions on that project?
And
So it's $5,000 to $15,000, well, it's $15,000, we prefer projects 5,000 or more. Depending on their income, it can be a grant or loan, or, grant or loan or both, up to $15,000. And we cap, and if their property value is over $330,600, it has to be a loan, there's no grant funds available.
one of the interesting, and maybe we've talked about this, but one of the interesting things with this is you do get a lot of seniors coming asking for a grant because they're worried about putting liens on their home, but we'll see that they have $200,000, $300,000 in equity. And we always do interest deferred pay, there's no payments until they sell the home or maybe pass away, then it has to get paid off. And we've been really judicious about that because we've started to see it as, this is really a gift to whoever's gonna inherit the home or the money from the home. And if we give it as a grant, if we do it as a loan or a grant, you get the same project done. If we do it as a grant, essentially, your children don't have to pay that back, and they're the beneficiaries of this money. Where really, when the idea is to get the money back to give it to the next person, we really have started to push more towards loans in those scenarios. And then this also adds to $40,000 that we have from this year currently. So really, this would give us $140,000 minus whatever we do between now and July.
My memory is the terms on those loans are really generous, is that right?
10 years, sometimes let the homeowner decide if they wanna make payments, some of the older people do wanna make payments, it's kinda cute, because, they don't wanna leave this to their kids, but,
Yeah.
if they're maybe a little bit higher income, a little bit younger, we may ask for payment, it's 10 years and no interest, so.
And usually somebody sells the home or passes away
It
before,
says 10 years unless the home sells.
or they refinance.
Right.
Yeah, anytime they refinance or get cash out, then it always has to be paid off
Right,
first.
but if it's deferred, it can be deferred into interest, so if someone lived another 20 years, we won't see the money for 20 years, yeah. Okay, any questions on that one?
And if the home becomes rented, we have had issues where that person moves on, the family keeps the home and they start renting. So we do have some checks that we do through county records and our utilities to make sure that it's still the owner that's in the home.
I like
I
that.
think I'm missing it here. How many loans or grants did
Yeah,
you do this year?
Reallocating it.
Or during 2019, say?
I think we're at 8,
Okay.
I don't know, I should have looked that up, sorry.
Does HUD, do they give you less in the future because you have kind of that coming back in the care?
So what happens it's called program income, so we have to use it first before we can draw down on any of the CDBG funds. So usually, like with our loans, we have probably, right now we have 3 loans and 2 are Habitat loans that we got back. So we've been paying, servicing them, plus one other older gentleman. And I think we bring in maybe $200 a month, $250 a month just on those loans. So when I draw down, I have to draw down less $250 because that money's come back to us.
And then the only reason HUD will get involved if the amount of money that they're giving us every year, if we're not spending it fast enough, then they'll start sending us warnings and doing things because obviously their idea is there's other people that need it, and if you're not gonna spend it, we'll give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
We've run into a couple of timeliness issues, but we've never had to give money back, and we've started to be more judicious about just moving projects along more quickly.
Okay. So the next one's to pay me, Stephen. So we're seeking $130,000 for administration of its CDBG program. So this is basically the cost to run the program. It's my salary, part of Stephen's salary, you know, supplies,
Trainings.
trainings, planning, those kind of things.
So HUD limits to 20%, and so of our 700,000, we could ask for 140. That would be our limit. But we just really determined what we actually needed, and
Right.
that's the number.
Okay. The next one is a loan that we received. It's called a Section 108 loan. We received the loan back in 2005. This was to provide some money to some local car dealerships to infuse job creation and that kind of thing in the community. So we have told those, one has gone bankrupt several times over those years. But they had to meet, yes, that would be it. It was Brett Brown, Ken Garth, and Mazda, whatever, you know, they're called. And they had to meet certain sales tax criteria and certain employment criteria, which they've all met at some point. And so we have said, as long as they're meeting those, then we pay this loan back. And so we did refinance the loan back. It was back in 2019, which gave us about a savings of almost $60,000. And so that was a good thing at that time. So you can kind of see the loan will be paid off in August of 2025. You can kind of see what we still owe on that and what our interest is on that over the time. The nice thing about this, if we never do this again, or this money, once this is paid off, that's additional money that can be used in our community. So that will be exciting to see that pay off. So we end up paying less principal now, more interest, and then more principal later and less interest, so. And I'm pretty sure those are right numbers. You know,
Yeah, that they provided
we
us.
got a lot of stuff going on, so. Any questions on that? So we have to allocate that, or it would have to come out of general funds or somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
So from whom did the city borrow this money from?
it's through HUD, it's CDBG. We could do it again. So say we were having, you know, we wanted to keep a car dealer in town, or we, you know, there's some economic development that we'd like to do, you can do that. Like Provo used it for their they did a Section 108 loan on their airport to do airport expansion. So it's really based on job creation, job retention, you know, economic development in the community. We haven't chosen to date. It's quite the process, was my understanding.
Yeah.
I mean, just refinancing was quite the process. So I can't even imagine getting would have been, so.
And when we refinanced, it's still, the payoff date stayed the same. Essentially, it's just that the interest went down.
So any questions on that? Okay, the next one, we're seeking $15,950 for neighborhood revitalization activities, including the creation of a mobile tool library. This is something we wanted to do for a while. We weren't able to fund that last year. And so this would just basically be for revitalization activities in the CDBG eligible neighborhoods, which is 6 neighborhoods right now, potentially could be more after the census or less. And these are just activities like our police picnics. We're looking, I don't know now with everything that's gone on, who knows. So we'd love to do a Rock the Block event with the police department where we go and rock a block, you know, take a bad block in one of the neighborhoods and just rock it, you know, paint whatever we need to do to make it better and have a big concert and stuff. So we probably will be doing that next year. But that's just some of the things that we'd like to do. We already have luckily we already have a cargo trailer that we purchased several years ago with CDBG money. Public Works has been using it kind of sort of with some of their volunteer tools and things that they've been using. So we can get that back so we don't have to buy a trailer, but a lot of this will just go, 5,000 is what I think I asked for in tools. And we will be able to do that. We were able to get some tools when we bought Habitat tools to help with the All Together Playground and help with their critical home repair program, and then they decided no longer to do that program, so we were given the tools back. We were able to get some tools from that also, so they're just down at Public Works waiting. They weren't as many tools as we were hoping to get, but we were able to sell them, actually. We sold most of the tools to the city, and that would be considered program income. So that, we had to use that first before we could draw down on funds. So, any questions on that?
So this is just like a total side note on this, but
It's a great project.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
I love this project, and being on the beautification commission,
Yep,
I feel like there's a little bit of like, we could maybe partner a little
that's a
bit.
good idea.
Yeah.
That's a really
With
good idea.
the commission to either give out some awards to some of these, or possibly do something else with the commission.
That's a really good
That's a
idea.
good idea. Yeah, we were going to kick off our Property All-Star program next month. This is for homes that have had some kind of code enforcement involvement, so that they've either received a warning or a citation, where they would nominate it if it cleaned up. It wasn't beautification. This is just, oh, the junk's gone, the house still looks not the best, but hey, the junk's gone kind of thing. But yeah, we'll see how that goes right now. But the mobile tool library, the other thing is we've made a proposal to potentially create what we call neighborhood preservation teams. Or these would be our preservation teams, where we would be able to use volunteers or volunteer teams to kind of help, like seniors, people with disabilities, single moms, things like that really struggle to maintain their properties, or just need a really good cleaning so that they can maintain it. And we would use the mobile tool library with these teams as well, if that's something that we end up doing. So, okay, any questions on that?
No.
Okay, the other is, as you know, we're seeking money to help pay salaries, benefits, and other direct costs for sworn and non-sworn officers in the city's neighborhood preservation unit. So many of you know that we do our code enforcement through our police department, through a unit called the Neighborhood Preservation Unit. They have three sworn officers and one part-time flex officer in this program. Hopefully more in the future, flex, non-sworn officers. And they're responsible to do code enforcement for the entire city with help from the development services, depending on what it is. And they do, but at least 30% of the calls. So Orem has 19 districts or 9 districts or 22 neighborhoods, but we're trying to do district. But of those, the 6 neighborhoods, so 6 neighborhoods cause 30% of our NPU calls. So those 6 neighborhoods that we work in, CDBG eligible neighborhoods, have 30% of all 22 neighborhood calls. Does that make sense? So we pay for that portion of their salary for those 6 neighborhoods. So we pay that 30% or whatever those calls. So the way we determine it is based on calls. So quarterly we look at calls, we look at the percentage based on other based on the whole city, and then we pay that percentage of those 3 officers. And then we pay full for the flex time officer. Because the flex time officer is supposed to spend most of their time in our neighborhoods, not all their time. So and then they also do some other activities. We do our Reading with Police program, so funding to pay our police officers to do that comes out of this fund. And then we also do what we call the point in time count, the homeless point in time count. And we have officers go out on that, and so that helps pay their salaries to do that. So, anything else you want to add to that?
No, so again, those efforts are just ones being done in those neighborhoods specifically. We also have started to do a little more proactive reach with additional, the flex person was hired to really just work in those neighborhoods. What we find is that most people respond once they get notified by just a letter or a phone call or something to say the city knows that there's some work that's got to be done on your property. And what we're starting to see, and why we need this help really, is many of those homes are rentals, and so we also need to work through not just the tenant but also the landlord. And so we've got 2 contacts to really make, and it's really a lot of coordination. But things that we're learning, we don't need a police officer we don't need somebody with a gun to do the letter. And so we're starting to hire more civilian help to just help us with the letters, help us. We'll send an not that we go with the gun pulled, but we'll send an officer when there's really an issue that's not being resolved. But most of these can get resolved once we know who to contact and we know exactly what the issue is. And so this money has allowed us to get people to be more dedicated to those neighborhoods because that is where the majority of the issues are. But we have a separate program that's being started to address working with the landlords to help us essentially recognize that you're not just invested in this home, you invested in this neighborhood. And we have, you should and need to have an interest in how this neighborhood looks and how your home looks. And in the past, we've really never had the ability to work with landlords very easily. This new program that we have launched requires all landlords to essentially get a license to have that rental so that we can work with them directly when there's issues.
Oh, yeah, I saw that in the newsletter.
Yeah, I mean, we've found some neighborhoods, one of these low-income neighborhoods, Geneva, is over 50% of the homes are rentals now.
Yep.
And it's, this isn't any commentary on who lives there, right? These people need homes as much as anybody, but what we're not interested is in landlords who have no interest in the neighborhood. That's not good for us, it's not good for the neighborhood, it's not good for the tenant. And so we've got to align all the interests, and this allows us to have that more coordinated outreach with the landlords.
One other thing is we might have talked about this before, we have what we call administrative law judge process. So we have, so what used to happen with our neighborhood preservation unit, if they cited a home for not maintenance, it would go through the criminal court. Well, the criminal judges don't want to deal with that, and it would take, it never happened because it's never happened. So we went to an administrative law judge process and it's working pretty well. So now if they're cited, they have a certain period of time. Well, usually they're warned, depends on the situation. Usually they're warned, they're given a certain period of time to clean up their yard or do what they need to do. If they, if their rental's illegal, they have to do this or that, yeah.
That was my question, when you say that 30% of all NPU calls are coming from the 6 neighborhoods, what are those calls consisting of?
Abandoned cars
Okay.
is a lot, graffiti.
Drugs.
Mental health is considered an NPU call.
Yeah.
And nuisance is the overarching thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are substantial, I just wanted to add, if this is essentially.
We're not going to say cut your weeds. There's a little bit of that, but some of these calls are, we have unfortunately more drug houses and some of those, and they all concentrate in kind of a lot of these areas.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some pretty heavy calls, which is why we've always kept this out of the police department, because some of these issues I'm not about to show up to,
Sure.
and so we do want to have them available, but we really want to beef up the other part of it. But and if we would have been able to bring more people, we could have talked through that in more detail. But
Right. So that, and with the ALJ process, now if they're cited and they have to, so if they're cited, they don't clean up their yard, they'll be cited, it's $50 a day until they clean it up. Then they have to appear before the ALJ judge, and the judge can say, we'll stop the fine now here. Or he has the ability to say, we're gonna go and clean it up and you're gonna pay for it. So there's a lot of things that go on like that. We've kind of been down because it's the weather, they don't really do a lot of NPU calls that are nuisance related during the weather, but it's gonna ramp up again here shortly. So maybe people will be cleaning up their yards because they can't leave their house. So, maybe this will help.
and all of this is on reimbursement. So every quarter we actually get a report to determine how many calls did we actually do in those neighborhoods, and we only draw down based on that. So we don't just get the money no matter what. We get the money if we actually were spending the time in the neighborhood. So
Yeah,
we do check on that too.
Since I've been here, we've gone from about 28 to 32%, just given the quarter. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that? Okay, well, the next one kind of has changed since I filled out the application. So originally, we made the application, so we've been working in Geneva Park, that's over there at Geneva neighborhood, it's a CDBG eligible neighborhood. We were able to use CDBG funds to put a new playground in the park. We used non-CDBG funds to put a futsal court in the park, donated in general fund funds. But we want to redo the parking lot there. And so we had allocated about $343,000 for that park, and we used about $195,000 for the playground. In that, and so we have the parking lot that is left.
And it's our first fully shaded playground, so we have a huge shade
Shade
structure
on it,
over the
yeah.
top of the playground.
Yes.
Which part of the,
Yeah,
so,
the new playground is real nice.
yeah, thanks, no, thanks, it is, it's really, really nice, and, hopefully this summer, kids can play together. But the idea of that was to target that in a neighborhood where, so we did CDBG money for pickleball courts in Sharon a few years ago. When that park became really busy with people all the time, we saw police calls go down, we saw a lot of benefits from having activity at that park. Geneva was a park that we did a survey of just the neighborhood, and 40% didn't even know that park existed. Because it's hidden, it's back, it's kind of not, I think they knew it was there, they just didn't realize that was a city park, they assumed it was the schools, because it's nestled between two schools. So the idea was, if we shade that park, then we're gonna have more people show up to it, therefore help the neighborhood, because now there's more activity going on at that park, and the less desirable activities won't happen when there's people there all the time. So that was the idea of targeting a neighborhood that needed more activity in the park. With that activity comes more capacity needed in the parking lot.
Right.
But it is a really beautiful park, and I'm anxious to see it at full utilization for sure.
Yes. Yeah, the futsal courts have been very popular. We were excited about that. We could not use CDBG on the futsal courts because it's the only futsal court in Utah County. And so we couldn't say that only people in that neighborhood would be using those courts. And so they felt like that we shouldn't use CDBG funds on that project. So we used general fund and some donated funds through the county and some other places for that. But it's been fun to watch that park. We had talked to some people, especially in the minority community, on what they'd like in that park, knowing that there are areas in that neighborhood that are over 60% Hispanic. And so we felt like, so we talked to people from Central Hispano, and they said that they really needed a park for all ages, because oftentimes in that community, both the parents work, and so either the grandparents are taking care of the kids because they're living together, or the older kids are taking care of the younger kids. And so to really put opportunities for the full family on all age groups. So that's something else that we looked at in that park. But the parking lot, there's also a Head Start preschool in the park, basically. It's not in our park, but it's right at the park. And they use our parking lot. And so the parking lot needs to be expanded too, and that kind of thing. So originally we were gonna do the parking lot with some funding, that original CDBG funding. So, but we got the bid, and it was quite a bit higher than we expected it to be, for lots of different reasons. Construction is just crazy, concrete is crazy, blah, blah, we'll go on and on. And so we were gonna come back and because we have some leftover funding through this, this year, and so we wanted to come back and say, can we use some of this leftover funding on that parking lot, because we're going to need it. Well, we met this week with the powers that be, or the people, those, our engineer and our public works people, and they have decided we had some leftover futsal money. We're getting a grant from Head Start for a little over $67,000 for the parking lot. And then we have a bunch of utility money in storm.
Well, when they got the bid breakdown, they saw that there was storm drain improvements that were needed, there was street light improvement, there was lighting and needs, and there was water lines that had to be moved. And so when you start talking about moving the utilities, we have utility money that can pay for those projects. And so they stepped up and said, well, let us take care of those so that you can use this money to help another park rather than just pour more money to benefit low-income neighborhoods into a parking lot, which is good. We need that parking lot, but if that money can be if that money can be diverted to help another neighborhood, let's do that.
So then this past year we allocated $200,000 in CDBG funds for Westmore Park. And we had two projects there. We wanted to replace the playground, and also there's a block wall that needs to come down. It's dangerous right now, and replace it with a chain link with slats. Neighbors not greatly happy about it, but that's what we're doing. Well, we need more money on that, park. 200,000 covers the playground, doesn't cover the wall. And so, we are going to probably, we'll talk about this in a minute, probably gonna transfer some of that 340 some of that funding from Geneva Park, over there. But we were wanting to put this 40,813 also at Westmore. And that will take care of the playground and the wall, and we won't have to put any general fund money into it
And get it done right.
and get it done right.
My memory
quickly.
is the wall's like 70K, is that right?
I think that's about right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and what's challenging there is, and this is always tough. Years ago, they built it with a nice stone wall. We don't do any other parks to that level, and so now when it's come time to replace it, the question is, do we replace it to that level, which is significantly more expensive? And neighbors would love us to do it. I understand why they would love us to do it, but as
they
we've
also build their own wall. Right?
and we've had conversations with them, and they said so there's a stone wall in the back, and they've all done chain link along their sides because it's much more affordable. And we like that. We agree, and we feel the same. We feel the exact same way. And so, again, it's the same conversation of we could pour twice as much money into getting you a brick wall at the expense of some other park in another neighborhood. And so, I think we're working through it. Some people have built up along that wall, potentially attached things to that wall over the years. We got to work through some of that, but. I think the council and we're all pretty committed to, we're going to do a nice fence. We'll slat it. We'll try to, and we'll keep up with the slats to make sure it always looks nice. But we can't do a stone wall at the expense of another park.
So what's the full lift needed at Westmore now?
Well, the playground's coming in about 195, or between.
Essentially that 200.
About
Yeah, so
200.
we're around there, maybe
Yeah.
about 2 left over. So, and then,
About 140,000, probably about 180,000 to take care of it's not just the fence, there's some other needs too, but to
Right.
take care of the rest of the park's needs.
sure. So this 40K would go towards part of the wall, and part of those other
Yep,
repairs. And
yep.
then where does the rest of that 140 come from?
And we're gonna talk about that in a little bit. So.
Yeah. And again, just know too, with all these projects, if the bids come in lower, that money rolls over and we talk about it next year.
Right. The nice thing is it's all reimbursable, so if we don't use it, it just sits there. We can use it at other times.
Yep.
This is our Orem only public service request. This is actually from our police department. We have a mental health unit in our police department. We are the only city in Utah County that has a mental health unit. And we have an amazing human being, named Jeremy Jameson. He's our sergeant in our mental health unit. And then Andrew Wright is the other police officer. And then they have, I don't know if she's flex or 2/3 time social work student that works there, plus some interns. But they do an amazing amount of good. So they go out on a lot of calls. If they feel like there's a mental health situation, they'll go out on the calls. Yes? They'll go out on the call. They work a lot with the homeless population, the transit population in our community. One of the things that they've been running into is our transit population is on the rise. As Rio Grande and all that stuff that's gone on in Salt Lake, they're being pushed down here. And so we're seeing a lot of different kinds of homeless here. A lot of people we don't know. Most of the homeless service providers in the past have known most people, unless they were just coming through. Kind of had these are new people no one's ever seen. We're seeing a lot more violent people in a way. So it's just we're seeing more and more numbers every day. We did the homeless count, I think, in the 3 nights we went out. I think we never saw the total, but I think we hit over finding 30 homeless people in Utah County, in Orem, in those 3 days. Just don't go to the laundromat in the middle of the night.
Remember, we're being
We have a homeless shelter, it's in the laundromat in the middle of the night. So that's a good place if you need to get numbers. So Jeremy Jeremy and I have actually been working on this for about a year. We've been looking for some funding to create what we call a homeless service fund. This fund would be for things like, what he's seen is there's that gap between him and getting that service, or that gap between him and that family member that can help that person. And so he's looking for funding to give like bus passes. I think we've secured some bus passes through UTA finally. The clothing, we do have a grant through DI right now for clothing. But, like we run into people that's cars broke down and so they're stuck in their car and they can't get anywhere. And if we can fix put a new battery in their car, we can get them out of here. They can go to services, or, they need a pair of clothes to go to work, or, just those small little things that can put them in the trajectory to go higher or get the service they need. It's that bus token in the middle of the day. They need to get to community action. They have no way to get there unless Jeremy or Andrew puts them in their car and takes them down there, which they do occasionally. So that's what he is asking for. It would be subjective in a way that he would make those decisions. No cash would ever be given to a person. No cash outlay would always be, we would purchase some of the things that we talked about in the grant application just to have that available for this unit to do their job. So that's kind of what he is asking for.
So just a question on that. In a year's time, you have DI and I can't remember the other organization that.
UTA.
UTA, yeah. Is 5,000 enough?
He thinks so. He feels like with some of the other resources, he thought that 5,000 is enough. One of the things that they do, I think is really cool, is they do what they call Operation Hydro. I might have written it in here, where they go out and 1 day or 2 days in a summer and look for transients, give them a bottle of water, kind of see what's going on with them. They also do it during the winter. They'll go do hand warmers or something like that and just take those out. They keep pretty good tabs. I went out with him one night on the homeless count and he knew some people and he knew where to go, and he's like, oh yeah, so-and-so's living over there behind the wall, or, that kind of thing. So, but it is a real problem. But if we can do, I always just feel like, sometimes that person just needs that small little hand up, or they need that bus ticket home. They just need to get back to family. And they just need, that bus ticket to go home, that kind of thing, so.
So I think kind of the thought is, we haven't really had a fund like this before. Let's start with 5,000 and see where it gets us,
Yeah.
and if we find that the need's greater. But Jeremy has such good relationships with people like UTA and DI and others that we get a lot of donated things,
Right.
and so we obviously will always use those first.
Well, the other thing is sometimes what happens, and this happens, and I know this happens quite a bit, people will come into town over the weekend and there's no services on the weekend. You can't, there's nothing, there's nowhere to go. Food and Care does some lunch and meals and things like that, but to get a roof over their head for the night, a motel voucher, sometimes they used to do, like through the police departments, we used to do on-call vouchering to sheltering, but they don't do much of that anymore. So that's something else that they run into frequently, especially on the weekends, just that there's nothing, so maybe the guy needs a hamburger or something like that, just to get him through the weekend. So that's the other issue.
I have to tell you a story about Jeremy, and I know I'm holding you up later than we want it to be, but Jeremy he's one of our favorites. So we talked about this reading with the cop, but they just go into low-income schools, Title I schools, and read with different classes for a period of time. So I was at somewhere for my, anyways, I was at a baptism for this young girl in our neighborhood, and I was talking to her mother, and she was telling me she's a third grader at Sharon Elementary, and she told me the teacher's name, and I knew that Jeremy had been to this class to do this read with the cop. So I asked her, did you have an officer come read to you recently? And it was Officer Jameson. And anyway, so the girl leaves, but the mom stays back, and she said, I could never get her to read, ever. And then Officer Jameson comes in, and he talks about how cool reading is, and he reads his favorite book to this class, and it's been weeks later, and he can't get her to put books down now. Now she just,
Wow.
he gave her a book, and now she just reads all the time, and it's just sometimes about, there's something that officers just bring to the table that just, they're a great influence, and in 99% of the time for good. We unfortunately hear about those other times, but Officer Jameson is an influence for good. And, you know, you go to these schools and do little things like that and potentially changes this little girl's trajectory forever, you know.
We
Really-
had,
really cool.
one class, so Officer Cook, he's another one of our officers that reads. He'd come to that classroom 3 of the 4 times in that month. And they all made him cards. It was so sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're hoping, we have an idea, since our reading program's kind of on hiatus now because they can't go to school. We're hoping to maybe do some videos of our officers reading,
Yes.
putting them online.
That's cool.
We think that would be fun. Asked Jeremy about it, and he's like, yeah, I'm all over that, and I asked Glenn, and he's all over it, so I think, we have about 5 or 6 officers that always read for for the reading program, and so they're really fun.
Dollar General gave us a $2,000 grant to buy books to give to the kids, so the officers can leave books behind
Yeah.
with the kids too, so.
Yeah, we were able to, actually, this round, we were able to give a pencil, a bookmark, a brand new book, so Captain Underpants is what we've been giving. And then United Way, through the reading, through their reading program, their Everyday Learners gave us other books. So now the kids have gotten 2 new books, a pencil and a bookmark.
If there is
because of
money
that.
to be found, Kenneth finds it. And she's found it in many different places.
There's money out there, it's just hard to find. So well, yeah, you can tell I like my reading, and my homeless people. So I'm a little probably too passionate about it. So those are our requests for the year. And so I don't know if you have any questions. There will be some money left over. We feel like we maybe will just keep that on the table for now, just to see see if we need more money for earthquake damage, if we need, just leave it on the table for right now.
And it's
since
not a
we
lot,
don't-
it's
It's $15,000
$15,000,
at that,
but.
if I did my math right.
I know that there was some discussion on the national level about continuing the CDBG program. Have you heard anything more on that? I mean, I know
Yeah.
already this year. but-
No, of course, yeah, so every year since he's been in office, Trump's budget has called for an elimination of the program. It's never happened, it's gone up during the time he's been in there. But I think that the challenge that anybody will have in ever eliminating it is every community across the country benefits from it, so the people that would have to eliminate it, i.e. the House or the Senate, they all represent people that are directly benefiting from this funding. So I don't see it going away. The stimulus had even more money for it. So yeah, it'll probably be a conversation every year he's in office at least, but whether it ever comes, I don't know.
I mean,
I'm just
most,
curious.
it's so in April 8th through the 13th, everything's so crazy right now, who knows? But they're having what they call a National Community Development Week. This is something the NCDA, which is the National Community Development Association, which we belong to, they promote federal funding in our communities, and so we've done different things. Last year we did letters to leaders and that kind of thing. This year we're actually, if all goes well, we're supposed to meet with Congressman Curtis, but he's shared his support. And we're putting together a portfolio of CDBG projects that we can share with him and also share with all of our leaders. So from our city council up to our national leaders, we will be sending this out to them if we get it all together and make it happen. So that's something that we've been working on as well. But so if you always tell your congressmen and senators that it's a good thing. Yeah, we've actually, our mayor's sent a couple of letters in response to this, in support of keeping CDBG and home funds. So, all right, so we probably, anyone want to make a motion to do we want to, it's so different now because we're doing it a little bit differently. So, the Joint Commission's already approved we did the 70,000, so we would just need to make a motion to approve the non-public services at those amounts that as stated, and so probably do the public service first and then the non-public services. So
You could probably just move to accept the funding as laid out in this presentation.
I would move to do the funding as laid out in the presentation.
Second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Alright.
From above?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, these are just informational things. So we have been, until the stimulus, we were kind of going down the road of, several years ago, we put we created what we call a revolving loan fund for business. So this is, for new businesses or businesses that want to expand. I think it's more for expansion, right? Where they can get a loan to help expand their business. And it actually, their payment, this is the nice thing about payments on those loans, are not considered program income. It actually just goes back into the loan fund. And so we have about a little over 300,000 in this revolving loan fund. And so we were thinking about maybe asking HUD if we could divert some of that money into doing some kind of stabilization program for businesses. We are not sure what we're going to do now. We're kind of taking more of a wait and see approach with the stimulus, but Seattle has a program right now that they just created. It's $10,000 grant for mom and pop businesses, 5 employees or less. And waiting to hear back from their people. I called them again today, but something. And so if we feel like there's a gap or something, we may look to divert some of that funds if HUD will let us, or some of this new CDBG funding. We potentially may come back to the commission and say, we'd like to use this new funding for something like this. So just to keep that in mind is something that we're toying with. We had a conversation with our city attorney, or one of our city attorneys today. She gave us some good advice on what we need to be looking at. Salt Lake's also doing a fund. It's a loan fund. They're not using CDBG as far as I can tell. One of my other colleagues was following up with their program, but they were doing it quick, like 3-day turnaround time. I'm not sure what funding they're using, but something similar to that. So we'll have to see. There's an SBA loan right now, but it's 3.75% interest. That's out there. So we'll have to see. There's some businesses in our community that are really, really, really hurting. So this is your question. So what we're planning on transferring this amount from Geneva Park to Westmore. Is what we're looking at.
Does that include the 40 that's in here?
No, this is
So
from the
total 180,000 for Westmore?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we need their permission to do that?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah.
I don't.
I don't believe we would need that. Cause in our plan, we've put it towards park improvements, and so we have flexibility of moving between parks.
So, but that's okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And so really a couple of last things. So public hearings will be April 14th and May 26th. I will get with you because I'm not sure what that's gonna look like. So we're looking at doing some virtual type meetings versus based on this that's going on. They'll do it next week for council. We'll see how that goes, but I'll get with you and we'll be presenting again if that works for you on those dates.
As far as we know, the meeting that day, we just don't know the format.
Right. And I'll put the presentation together again and we can go through it and all that. So that's not good. And then, so we do a public hearing. We're actually for public hearing, we're actually maybe introducing our consolidated plan at that hearing. And then we're also at that hearing introducing our recommendations. Then with our consolidated plan, it has to have a 30-day preview comment period. I'm not sure if we'll do it. They've extended our ability to extend, so I'm waiting to see what the other entitlements are gonna do, because he has to write part of it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our goal. The other part would be, and then May 26th, we'd have the approval of our recommendations, and also maybe the approval of the consolidated plan at that point, is kind of our plan. So we invite you to participate as a commission. Ken and I, as the chair, will make the presentation to the council. But if you want to come, or I'll send an email how that's going to look.
Yeah.
You may just can look on, whatever you want to do.
So the March 31st one next week is no public allowed. None of our council members will even be here. This will all be done digitally. governor had to change state law in order to allow us to do this, but not just us, every governing body. I have a feeling April 14th will be very similar, just because I don't, based on what he laid out for the recovery plan, I don't think they're gonna be encouraging it more by April 14th. Unless hydrochloroquine or whatever is the magic word, I don't know. But anyways, we'll just keep you posted of whether you can be here, but in any event, it will be streamed live and you'll be welcome to watch it that way.
But, just two more things. So, we approved the critical home repair, policies and procedures. We came across a loan in our last loan committee, that we realized that we were lacking maybe something that we needed as a qualification in our critical home repair program. And so I printed that off for you, but, this girl had 75% debt ratio, which 60% was her housing ratio. Even though we do grants and loans, I don't know that we feel comfortable at that, for fear that they may lose their home. And so we wanted just a caveat in the critical home repair, program that we could deny them on debt if needed. My reasoning, because a couple of different reasons. Grant money, I don't want to throw grant money at a house that's going to be lost. If that, I just don't think that's a good idea. And then with loan funds, even if they're deferred and we'll get them back, I don't know that that's a good use of funds when someone that's going to live in their home really needs that. Our consultant doesn't necessarily agree with me on this piece, but, and I think we'll be very careful and not, especially older people, understanding that they're on fixed incomes. This was a young person that was just in a home she struggled in, yeah. So, but it would just, the applicant's total monthly debt ratio, housing and other debt will be considered as a qualifying factor for the program. Generally, applicants will not qualify if their current total debt ratio exceeds 43% of their gross monthly income, and that's about the FHA standard. Some exceptions apply and will be up to the loan committee's discretion. Do you have any comments on that?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so if we can just get a motion on that.
I'll motion it.
Okay.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so with, that, we are done. We will meet again if we don't, need to meet for additional funding. We'll probably meet again this summer, and just kind of see where we're at, who wants to stay, where we're turning off, who wants to be chair, that kind of thing. So we'll be ready for, we wrap up again. I know it blows me away, but we ramp up again in September for October to start all over again. So, but I really appreciate your service and appreciate you being here tonight. I know, especially with all this that's going on. So, do you have any questions or?
No.
Okay, you're awesome.
It was a great meeting, thank you.
Thanks, Mattathias. Stay well, and thank you. And if you have questions or anything, let me know. So, and there's an extra salad. You can leave if you'd like.
Just watching.
See you, Mattathias, take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
If the beautification commission ever meets again.
Mattathias Westwood.
Maybe
Has left the
put
conference.
that on the agenda just to kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
talk about that. I think that
I think that's a great
would
idea.
be, just bring a lot more visibility to it.
Yeah.
And, or at least some, and just might be a really nice tie-in.
I like that a lot. It's the idea of beautification committee
Yeah.
together on the rehab,
Yeah.
revitalization projects.
Yeah, that's